Hey guys, welcome back to Moyo, the cooking channel that's not so useless. This is episode 1 of the Fish Dish mini-series, where I go over the many beloved fish dishes of my childhood. So, this episode will be showcasing how to make a very simple teriyaki salmon dish that you can make at any time and anywhere once you've pre-made the sauce. Speaking of the sauce, it's quite simple and you will only need 3 ingredients: Japanese soy sauce, sugar, and mirin. This recipe will make about 750 milliliters of teriyaki sauce that you can keep in the fridge and use with any ingredient which pairs great with a bowl of steaming rice. And for that, we will need 480 milliliters of Japanese soy sauce, 600 milliliters of mirin, and 200 grams of sugar, preferably raw sugar. Now, to make the sauce, put all the ingredients into a pot and turn the heat on high. Stir the sauce over the heat until all the sugars melt. Once the sugar melts, stop stirring and keep a close eye on the sauce. You must make sure to be watching the sauce throughout the entire cooking process, as it may boil over. When the sauce starts to get a little foamy and there are visible bubbles appearing, turn the heat down low. At this stage, we are now aiming to reduce the volume of the liquid to about 2/3 its original size, and this process can take anywhere between 30 to 40 minutes. As a visual guide, we use a chopstick with lines to show how much you need to reduce the sauce by. Once the sauce has reduced to 2/3, turn the heat off and let the sauce cool down. The sauce should look something like this, nicely coating the spoon. Once the teriyaki sauce has cooled down, pour it into a container for use at any time. Now that we're done with the teriyaki sauce, let's cook the salmon. Here we have 2 salmon fillets, both washed, dried, and the skin removed. We're going to lightly season the salmon with salt and white pepper. You don't need to be generous with the seasoning, as the teriyaki sauce already packs quite the punch. Once you have seasoned the salmon, let it rest at room temperature for at least 15 minutes. Now, the salmon is going to be cooked with 2 different methods: traditional pan fry and sous vide. So firstly, pan frying our salmon. Turn your heat to high and add a little bit of oil to your saucepan when it gets hot. We only need a little bit of oil, as the salmon is already quite an oily fish. Once your oil gets nice and hot, place your salmon on the saucepan and cook it for about 1 minute, or until you start to see some golden color. Turn your heat down low and continue cooking for another 1.5 minutes. My family's general rule of thumb is that we give roughly 2.5 minutes of cooking time per finger thickness of the salmon. So in this instance, the salmon fillet was about 2 fingers thick, and thus we're cooking it for roughly 5 minutes in total. Once the 1.5 minutes is up, flip the salmon over and turn the heat on high for another minute, then low again for another 1.5 minutes. Because the salmon fillet is not even in thickness, we position the thinner portion away from the center of the heat to prevent it from overcooking. Once that time is up, turn off the heat and add as much sauce as you want. Let the sauce heat up from the residual heat for about 20 to 30 seconds, and your teriyaki salmon is ready for plating. For the extra presentation, go sprinkle some spring onion and roasted sesame seeds on top, and your teriyaki salmon is done. But just look at the salmon. A nice crispy outside with a buttery inside, requiring barely any force or chopsticks to cut through. If you want the salmon to be more cooked, add about 30 seconds to a minute on each side when you're cooking. Now, as great as this pan-fried salmon is, if you're lazy and always want a perfectly cooked salmon, regardless of your cooking skills, then a sous vide machine is the way to go. For those of you living under a rock, sous vide is essentially a temperature-controlled water bath that will ensure that anything cooked in the water bath will never go over the said temperature. Begin by letting your sous vide machine run at 47 degrees Celsius or 117 degrees Fahrenheit. I personally enjoy sous videing salmon at this temperature, as the salmon's texture is nicely between buttery and flaky, similar to the pan-fried salmon. If you are unsure on what temperature you would like your salmon sous vide at, there are many visual temperature charts online. So next, we vacuum seal the salmon to remove any air and prevent any uneven cooking. Once your water bath reaches 47 degrees Celsius, put the salmon in and let it cook for about 40 minutes. Once the 40 minutes are up, your salmon will look something like this. It doesn't look that appetizing at this moment, but we will be giving it a nice sear in a second. Open the sous vide bag and carefully, and I mean carefully, move the salmon onto some paper towels. The salmon right now is quite delicate and will quite literally fall apart if too much force is applied. Pat the salmon down with paper towels. We want to remove as much moisture from the surface to allow a nice crust to fall when we pan fry the salmon. When you have removed enough moisture, turn your heat up high and start heating up some oil. We want the oil to be nice and hot, as we only want to sear the salmon, not cook it any further. Carefully place the salmon into your fry pan and sear one side for about 30 seconds, and then do the other side for roughly the same amount of time. Again, be very careful when flipping, because the salmon is very delicate. Once you have a nice sear on both sides, turn off the heat and pour in as much of the teriyaki sauce as you want. Because the pan is still hot, let the sauce heat up for about 5 to 10 seconds and then go ahead and plate. If we have a peek inside, it's nice and buttery and flakes apart well. Definitely a great meal with some rice. So guys, that was my family's recipe for teriyaki salmon cooked 2 ways. If you ever get the chance to try this recipe out, be sure to leave a comment and tell me how it went. See ya.